Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. So actually Dungeons and Dragons 5e, but actually I have a guest with me who's going to talk specifically about how to run Dungeons and Dragons or play Dungeons and Dragons with kids. That's Dungeons and Dragons 5e. Hi, Sadie.
Hello, I'm Sadie Rogers. I'm in Chicago and I do run Dungeons and Dragons online for kids ages 9 to 14 primarily, but have also been recently delving into running it for much younger kids, ages 5 to 8. And I have lots of exciting things to share with you that may kind of demystify that.
So let's talk about the nuts and bolts. How do you go about simplifying Dungeons and Dragons 5e rules for kids? And really, we're talking about combat because the hardest part of the game, and I know a lot of people will say yes, but Dungeons and Dragons 5e is a very simple game. Well, yes, maybe compared to previous versions of the game, but what do you do with the game when you're dealing with the combat aspect of it for younger kids, or maybe your ages 9 through to 12? What are you doing with that in terms of the rules?
I definitely have ways that I simplify combat for younger kids that are super easy to use and, take this and manipulate it to work for you, make it work for you, because it's really just a matter of, as a DM, how you want to roll with things. I start everyone at a set HP. I start everyone at 15 HP. That's it. No worries about hit dice. I take that off the table. This is specifically speaking to 5 to 8 year olds. I have everyone at a starting AC. I don't make them calculate an AC. I literally just give them one. Fighter 13, Ranger 11, Sorcerer 10, Druid 11. Feel free to bump that how you wish. And then when they do an attack with a weapon or with a spell, they roll a d20. They don't add anything to that. There's no such thing as an attack bonus or a proficiency when you're dealing with younger kids. You just roll a d20. How the way to make that easy for you is, say they're fighting a goblin. Goblin has an AC of 15. Make it have an AC of 11. Make it easier for them to hit that goblin. Make them the heroes right away. In so you're evening out the scales because you're kind of setting everything on one side. So make sure you're also doing that for your evil guys and stuff like that. And then for the damage die, I have very simple list of weapons they can choose from and a very simple list of spells they can choose from. So they're not getting the whole PHB. And then the damage die has no modifier added to it. So my personal list is the crossbow 1d10, the longbow 1d8, the great axe 1d12, the longsword 1d8, the great sword 2d6, and the dagger 1d4, and the spear 1d6. I picked those because they're the most basic ones, but also because they have a lot of fun different dice. I thought it'd be fun for kids. And then leaving off that modifier, that gives them the choice of picking the dice each time and, maybe give them a couple weapons to start out. Do not worry about what weapons they should have with that class or that race and all that stuff and what they're proficient with. If that kid wants to wear heavy chain mail or whatever the case may be, let them, and then just use it in the descriptions of the actual story building, like, okay, you're clanking along, it's pretty loud, not really introducing disadvantage and advantage yet as game mechanics, but actually just using it in the story building itself. I do also want to say that for saving throws, I kind of do the same thing, simplifying that. I have everyone's DC at 12. That's the bad guys, the bad girls, and the players. It's just a 12. It's a number, in the same way that 8 plus proficiency plus whatever would be your number. 12 is usually the average for a level 1 player. So 12. And they roll a d20 and they either are below or above. I do have a sample list of spells that I use for younger kids that I can also tell you is, and these are picked based on like what kids like. Burning Hands. I have one called Create Magic. Create Magic is prestidigitation. Really, what that is if I describe that to a child, I would say, how do you want to distract them? What kind of magic do you want to do that distracts them? You've mentioned the butterflies last week. That was brilliant. Usually, creating little lights like dancing lights or something like that. Why not simplify those into a spell that's called Create Magic? Cure wounds, speak with animals. Every kid wants that. Good berry, create or destroy water. For some reason, kids always pick that one. And Ray of Frost. So that's it. That's what they have to choose from. I tell them they can choose up to 5, which is almost all of those, and that they can cast 3 before they need to go to bed. Simple as that. Takes everything else off the table. No spell attack bonus. DC's 12.
What do you do with initiative? Do you use the initiative system or do you use something else?
I still use initiative for kids. I call it your turn. I describe combat basically when I'm, especially with younger kids, I say, okay, we're going to roll a dice to decide when you go. Obviously, I don't have like an initiative bonus. It's just a D20 roll, right? You roll a dice to see when you're going to go. Basically, think of it like a Marvel movie where they've all backed up against each other and the camera's panning around in slow motion and they're all attacking at the same time, or, lashing out with an arrow, spells are coming out. So all of that's kind of happening at once, but we're going to use these dice to decide exactly how it happens in our game, which is kind of what I say to adults too when they're confused about initiative order, because it can get a little confusing if you're new to D&D. It's sort of one of my favorite things about D&D, to be honest. So I love explaining it, but with little kids, it's like, okay, it's kind of all happening at once, but we're going to see whose damage takes effect first. And then, yeah, I just write down that I just have them roll a D20 and I roll it for the big bad evil peoples, and that's initiative. So that's never been a problem with kids. They get that. So I say keep it in if you want to. You can also just have, I've read a couple articles that say when people run D&D at home, they'll just have it be like, it always goes around the table, or they roll it once and then that's the initiative every single time. So it's a set initiative for their family, and then only the monsters are rolling to see where they fit within. That works too. I mean, it's really whatever's best for you as the DM, whatever's going to keep you sane.
So one of the rules that I really struggle communicating to people, and I was wondering how you deal with this, and that is bonus actions. I mean, trying to distinguish an interaction, which is often referred to as a free action. Bonus actions are really hard. Explaining to people what movement is usually pretty easy. Actions, that's pretty easy. Reactions, a little bit more difficult, but the bonus actions always give me trouble because people always assume that the bonus action just means they get another action. Do you use bonus actions when you're running games for kids?
It's funny that you would ask this because I spent an hour this morning typing an email to an 11-year-old because we got into a very serious discussion about 2-weapon fighting as a fighter with extra attack and action surge, and he was having a hard time with where bonus action fit into that. And to be honest with you, so was I. Normally I have a good grasp of it, but for some reason I got confused again and had to go back and like make sure I understood. Bonus actions are confusing. They just are. They're confusing for adults. They're confusing for kids. Ages 9 to 14, like I said, they seem to get it right away. They just do. But yeah, with younger kids, I basically don't introduce. I don't say to the kids, okay, it's your turn. You have a free action. You have a movement. You have a bonus act. I actually just say, what do you want to do? And then they'll usually be like, can I jump on top of the giant, flip off, and shove a spear into its back? And I'm like, absolutely. Roll acrobatics to see how cool it looks, and then let's roll to hit with that spear. If you have a kid that wants to do way too many free actions and they're describing their move and there's all this stuff going on, and it has a movement in it and an action, you can, as the DM, you can sort of keep that in your mind. But if they want to do a bunch of stuff in between, like throw a tressum in the air, or throw down a bag that might have like something evil and I don't, anything, why not? They're 5. I usually yes and that. If they come to you and they're asking you specifically about the mechanics of what they can and can't do in combat, sure, go ahead and tell them the steps that they can do with their race and class. But if you're playing a world building game like that, you don't really have to worry too much about that. If you don't introduce it in the first place, it shouldn't come up, especially with the younger kids.
So one of my pet peeves has always been opportunity attacks. And I've done a video. It's very hard to explain to people how opportunity attacks work in Dungeons and Dragons 5e. And yes, I know it's a lot easier than it used to be, but do you use opportunity attacks with kids?
Definitely learned what opportunity attacks were from your video many moons ago, and still think that's super cool that we're talking now because it's like a throwback. I had the hardest time with opportunity attacks as a player. I just couldn't. I kept thinking everything was an opportunity attack. So if he hits him and then she hits him, and then it was just like, I couldn't quite get it at first. So videos like yours helped me a lot with that. Kids 9 to 14 seem to get it. I just repeat to them every time it's if you leave the space. But with younger kids, with 5 and 6 year olds, I'm not really going to have the monster attack them without warning them first. Like if you run right now, he might try to get you. He might not. And then give them that choice. Like I don't, but if they are in a situation where they should get an ops attack, I definitely will point that out in their favor and be like, okay, he's trying to run away. Do you want to take a shot? Do you want to go for him? He's running past you. Like, feel free to whatever. And so I'm just casually like giving them in a descriptive way the opportunity to attack.
When it comes to casting spells that have a concentration element to it, do you even bother with concentration? You can just breeze over this really quickly. I'm just curious as to whether you bother with concentration spells with the younger generation.
I do definitely deal with concentration with 9 to 14-year-olds. And I go over the mechanics of that with them. With younger kids, I just leave it out. If they're trying to stack spells too much in any way, sure, I might say something, but I wouldn't say the word. I wouldn't worry about what type of magic it is or concentrating on it. Mm-hmm.
You've already explained how you do saving throws, but there's one saving throw in particular that I want to talk to a little bit more, and that is the death saving throw, because that there is a rule which I kind of felt could have easily been a variant rule, either use it or not use it. Do you use that in your games when you're running Dungeons and Dragons 5e with kids?
I love death saves. I do. I can't help it. I just think it's very exciting. But I think I've heard a couple of you speak to not caring for them as much or as a variant rule. With little kids, I don't have them keep track of it. There's no place on their character sheet that even has that. I keep that completely out. But if they're down, the first time they're down, they'll be like, "Wait, am I dead?" And you're like, "No, you're still alive. You're hanging in there. Give me a death save." And I'll be like, "Roll a d20. Let's see what happens." And then I use what their number is. Obviously, I'm never going to kill off a kid, right? So I use what their number is to describe how much they're suffering in this moment, like raspy breathing or you're coughing. So it's pretty obvious to everyone that you're about to get up if they roll high, or you're not looking great. You're getting really pale and there's just like blood everywhere and that kind of thing. So I make it more descriptive. With the 9 to 14-year-olds, though, I absolutely stick to the mechanics.
So years ago, I came across a parent, and this guy had been following my YouTube channel, and I tried to give him a book called The Curse of Strat. And he explained to me that he could not take the book, even though he was running Dungeons and Dragons, because I found out he was a dungeon master, and I like to give dungeon masters stuff. He said, "No, I'm running my game for my 5-year-old and my 6-year-old. They're both girls, and this is too gothic, it's too dark for them. They could not handle this." And he explained how he ran the game. And one of the things he said is, "I don't do death saving throws with my kids, because if their characters die, it would be too traumatic. So there's no death saving throw for them." And so he eliminated that aspect of the game completely. And I thought that was quite interesting. And then he said, "Look, it's not just their character dying. They don't like to kill the monsters or the NPCs or the creatures they come across in their game. They're always trying to make friends with them, or they're trying to deceive them or avoid them, but specifically almost trying to make friends with absolutely everything under the sun. They're trying to deal with it in a different way. And even when combat breaks out, the idea that they would do something that would kill the monster, creature, or NPC, they could not deal with." So he said, death is like off the card for my girls. And I was kind of wondering how you would sort of respond to something like that, because I thought that was very interesting.
I think it totally makes sense. You got to read the room when you're a DM, right? I mean, we all know that. And so with kids in that session 0, when you ask them who they're going to play, you also talk about the game a little bit. And in that first session, you can kind of gauge that too. And I mean, I've absolutely had similar experience with kids who just could not kill animals. Owlbears, wolves, anything that might be conceivably cute in some fashion, even a spectator at one point, were not options for death. And that, I mean, as a DM, that has to be fine with you. If it's not, then I just don't understand why, you know what I mean? So, like, so your friend is right. Like, embrace that and make the game be that for them. With older kids, I haven't had too much trouble with that. They want to kill everything. There are some diplomatic type kids who like to try to bargain and stuff like that, and I award that with inspiration.
This has been a great conversation, Sadie. So thank you very much. So where can people find you, Sadie?
I am available on Instagram at Sad Pigs. That's SADPIGS. And I am also working on a film about some adults playing D&D that is in early development called Heart of the Trepid, and it's on Instagram at Heart of the Trepid. That's TREPID. My YouTube is Sadie and Valinor, and I'm kind of all over the internet. So come find me, ask me any questions, hit me up anytime. I'm around. Thank you.
So I'm going to put all of those links, or as many as I can, down in the description so you can find those. Thank you, Sadie, for being on. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.